dating, was marrying a beautiful lady named RJ and having two twins with her. I think we're going to have another one.
I'll just say, you know, I've had the pleasure now of serving as our community's mayor now for my 4th month. And, you know, it actually has started out pretty active. The day before I took the oath of office, we had that most unfortunate shooting on the campus of Florida State University. And got sworn in on that Friday. And then that Saturday, we had the very, very unfortunate occasion where, for the first time in 100 years, we lost a sheriff's deputy on that Saturday. And it really tested the will of our community in so many ways. But like all strong communities, I think the people of Tallahassee put community first. They put friendship first and family first, and I think we made it through a pretty difficult set of days and weeks. And since that time, things have been moving rather quickly on a number of fronts. One of the things that I did before assuming office and taking the oath of office is my team and I looked around at some places that are doing some things that we find very encouraging, and that because I don't believe that anything is ever invented out of whole cloth except lies, but generally most things are duplicated from some other good effort that has happened elsewhere. And so one of the first communities I visited was the city of Chattanooga, Tennessee, and our community on a number of occasions, thanks to David Ramsey, frankly, has, I think, made 2 or 3 different visits to Chattanooga to look at different things that community has to offer. But one of the things that really intrigued me about Chattanooga was the work that it's doing to, they're known as the 1 gig city. And they started to reframe what people thought about them after they made a number of sort of infrastructure improvements. But if you talk to the mayor there, one of the things that he highlights is when they started to become known as a 1 gig city, that young people who were coming through there decided that maybe this is a place that they could live and start a business and innovate and create. And they began to roll out a really robust economic development strategy focused on home and what it meant to grow homegrown talent and to invest in the intellectual capital of their community. Charleston, Tennessee, another probably unlikely place, but visited there. If you've ever been there, you probably will regale about the food. And 10 years ago, probably not much else. But the mayor there, Mayor Riley, who's been mayor for 40 years, is actually leaving office this year. About 11 years ago, took inventory of his landscape, and he basically plotted wage growth over the past, I think he said 20 years, and then projecting out. And what he saw, basically, wages were flatlined and not at a very high level. It was a community that in many ways had not really determined what it was going to be when it grew up. And so what he set out to do was to develop a small business incubator center. They call them flagships. And created, invested in this young man, Ernest Andrade, who I actually invited here to speak to the Tallahassee City Commission during our retreat. And Ernest's charge, his singular charge, was how they could create a more dynamic economy in Chattanooga and Charleston. And what started out as one single building with a couple of upstarts in it, a couple of folks with ideas, some on their second or third career and some on their very first career. A couple, about 30 businesses that began there. Today has resulted in now 3 flagship facilities, 3 buildings, with over 160 businesses that have been developed, and something around a 90% success rate, meaning those who graduate 3 years later are still in business, and in many cases have grown and multiplied. I thought it was an interesting strategy, and quite frankly, one that I'm very much so interested in employing right here in the city of Tallahassee. Why? Because like Charleston, some might say that we have an interesting economy, but in a lot of ways, not as dynamic as you'd like to see, and much of that has to do with our situation, the fact that we are the state's capital, the fact that 50% roughly of city lands is off the tax roll, the fact that we're the home to Florida State and FAMU and TCC, which provides good wages and good jobs for a lot of people in our community, but in many cases those are educational government jobs. And while we've got a number of businesses that help to make up our private sector, many of them thriving, many of them long-standing businesses that make up that sector, I believe that we still have room to grow when it comes to our private sector economy. And what it is that we can do to retain more talent that is coming off of our university environment. When we invited Ernest here, one of the things that he reflected on, we gave him a day to go around the community with some of our economic development partners to get a real assessment and a real feel for the city of Tallahassee. And then, you know, he came and presented the next day his feedback to us and gave us some strategies that he thought might make sense for us to employ. And one of the things he said is, man, Tallahassee has, you know, it's got a world-class educational system, something we didn't have in Charleston when we began the flagships and the resulting success that flew from it. And he said, you've got everything that you need in this community to run circles around the city of Charleston and the success that we've achieved in building a private sector ecosystem that is robust and thriving and boasts a number of new businesses and retains good talent. And I thought to myself, the fact is that we have for a long time had a lot of those assets that he applauded us for. FAMU and Florida State and TCC didn't just show up in our communities, they've been here. The difference is, God bless you, what do we need to do to make the difference between where we are today and where I think we want to be? What is going to be that sea change that has to happen to make folks start to look twice about the type of community we are? One of those things is, I think, quality of life and what we do to sustain and to build and to strengthen the quality of life, because a News and World Report showed that millennials particularly were deciding where they were going to live, where they were going to stay, not based off the wages they were offered, but the quality of life that they could expect in the places that they chose to settle. Retirees, we've got, you know, this Choose Tallahassee effort. We've got baby boomers retiring all over the country, a lot of them moving to Florida. And how do we make ourselves competitive to start to retain some of those baby boomers, where they're also looking for good quality of life? They want athletic events, sporting events, they want outdooring. They want to be able to enjoy the Florida sun. They also want to enjoy arts and culture and all those things that we don't give a lot of lip service to, that really does help to shape and decide and determine what a community is, and frankly the best parts of what a community is. And so to go deep there. I also think what we're doing and what the county began to do when the city of Tallahassee decided to make an investment in bringing Danfoss Tobacco here, the county went a different way, and they said they were going to set up what we have, the new, I think, beginnings of what could be a thriving, innovative, and entrepreneurial ecosystem down off of Gain Street. And I think exploding our investment in that area so that innovators who are coming off of our university campuses can choose that Tallahassee is the place that they want to live, work, and play, and decide to make Tallahassee home. So many of them, when they cross the threshold of that stage, when they get their diploma, they're on the first thing flying or moving out of this city because they don't think it's a real option for them to stay here. And I would argue that this is a real option. But we've got to do some things to help cement the impression that we're a real option where people who are outside of government and outside of the university system can choose to come and stay, and I think help build our local economy. And I think folks are beginning to look different based off of a number of investments that we've made in this community. People are beginning to look differently and think differently about the city of Tallahassee. We're the capital city of what is now the third largest state in America. We are, as they tell me, the smartest city in the state of Florida, with almost 1 of every 2 people having at least a bachelor's degree. Knowledge is currency, if you will. Very, very smart community. And I think that the sky really is the limit when it comes to shaping this community in such a way and in making the appropriate investments that make people think twice about coming here, staying here, growing their families here, growing their businesses here, letting us get back a little bit of what we've given to them during their academic pursuit here, get a little bit of that back through their time and their talent and investment, their creativity, their innovation, their entrepreneurship, that I think is going to be the underlying advantage to making Tallahassee's future economy exactly what we need to be a dynamic capital city. And so with that, there's probably a lot that I can go into, but I will reserve the remainder of my talking time to answer any questions that you may have. Or Ted, is that the appropriate thing to do?
Yes, sure.
Great, I think we've got some minutes for questions.
Let me start off by
Go
this.
right ahead.
Since this is a quiet group, I can't believe this is a quiet group. It must be a cloudy day. I know that you were in a CRA meeting today.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us an update of what transpired?
Yeah, it was a dynamic meeting, as they are increasingly becoming. We talked about developing a investment plan or an investment portfolio that will help us get certain areas of our district that have not benefited from the largesse of the CRA and its, frankly, the really positive things that we've seen happen through the CRA on the Gain Street corridor. The early investments the CRA made and the city made in aggregating land and redesigning that roadway, which has now spawned, last estimate, a little more than $450 million in private sector, non-public investment in the area. I think it has been catalytic to helping to reshape people's impressions of the capital city. I think they're thinking differently about where they live. At one end of the street, you've got College Town and what's happening there and the offshoot development that has come up the street. And I think anchored at the other end of Gain Street is Cascades Park that began as a stormwater retention facility and I think has turned into a world-class amenity for our city. It's our city's central park. And last year I was privileged to sit at the negotiating table with Florida State University and myself and some city staff to acquire about 5 acres of land that they previously owned. We did a couple of land swaps, and they wrote writing an almost $2 million check back to the CRA for the land that we traded and then that we took up. And I believe that those 5 acres can be transformative to what happens around that park. I envision that we made the decision today to go off with an RFQ to see what kind of proposals, what kind of ideas will people have for what to do with that parcel of land. And it's my hope that we'll see some proposals that come back with some housing, some fair market rate housing, and some mixed use that might include restaurant or cafe space, maybe some retail, who knows? I think arts is going to be a major part of it. Coco was there today. The folks from Lemoyne were there today. As you know, some of you may know, Lemoyne is looking at changing homes. Their building is for sale. If anyone's interested, they've got quite a large parcel, frankly, in the downtown area that I think can either be repurposed or frankly leveled and something else put in its place. But they're looking for a new home, and so I think the fact that the state has a huge investment portfolio that they set aside. It's only answerable to the cabinet. Ash Williams runs it here in town, almost $1 billion that he has to invest money. The state knew that during down economic times that it could be a huge stimulus to bringing jobs and creating business here in the state, and so they did that. I sat down with Ash Williams trying to think, one of the big gaps that people say exists between their ability to either start a business or to scale their business up. And I love that about Charleston's model because it's not just a new innovative idea, it's also existing businesses and how you help people scale their existing business up, providing mentorship, not just the capital, but the mentorship necessary. And in Ash's case, he's got this huge investment portfolio. He's right here in the state's capital. He has had not one application request come from FAMU, FSU, or TCC in his time running that program. UF, however, every year has something coming across his table for investment, the leveraging of that capital. And so, is it next week or 2 weeks? I can't remember. We've got the vice presidents of research from FAMU and FSU. We've got Kyle Touchstone from the EDC, some other administrative staff from the universities, and my staff at the city coming together with Ash for him to lay bare, okay, what is this program all about? How do we access it? How do we bring some of that money, leverage that money down for the local level to help our small and freshly new starting businesses access the capital that they need to then go to the next level, to take it to the next scale. And so I look forward to seeing where that conversation goes. But in Chattanooga, they've kind of figured, in Chattanooga and Charleston, but specifically Charleston through the flagships, they've taken that model of DOMI and really perfected it and are having great successes in producing new business and growing existing business.
Ben, go ahead.
Yes, sir. We've not gotten back the fire services fee assessment, but what I don't think is fair is I don't think it's fair for city residents to subsidize county usage of fire services, which we subsidize to the tune, at the city direct support to the tune of about $1 million prior to this fee coming into place. And prior to that, I think the county used to stroke a check of $1 million or so more to bridge the gap between paying for the service and the services that was being rendered to the unincorporated area. I think we need, one, we're going to have to pay for the fire services that we get. They do an amazing job, but in some of our incorporated areas, the response time is still not acceptable, and I think we don't want to slip back into that place. When this fee went into existence, we were running, in some cases, 19 minutes response time in unincorporated, which is unimaginable. I mean, by that time, if you're calling because your house is on fire, it'd be to the ground. And so, I think what we want to do is keep up with our state and our national standards. And I will support whatever fee they bring back that constitutes the equitable provision of services. And what is principal to me is that the city, those in the city limits, aren't subsidizing services in the unincorporated area.
Do you agree with the flat fee approach within the city, though, that it's not based on the value of the house, that you just pay a flat fee? Do you agree with that approach?
So long as the response times, because what you're really paying for is that when you call 911 or whomever, that regardless of what side of the town you live on or how big your property is, that you're going to get the service that you require, that you demand.
Well,
thank you, Ted, and thank you all.
thank you, Mayor. Give him a hand.
Thank you. We'll hear from Ted next year. Maybe. But anyway, that's it. Thanks for coming. Have a great day.